Yeah. Family, y'all. Just keep it tight, keep it tight, keep it tight. Oh, right. Yeah. Here we go.
So that's the time of the prophets, 500 to 600 BC. But then in the time just before Jesus, we had various communities who had this idea that they wanted to be really holy. Follow me now. Some of them we may have heard of the Essenes at Qumran. The Essenes were this group who were just really interested in having this pure relationship with God. And if you're interested in that, you're just going to focus all day on your relationship with God. And they had various symbols and various rites that helped to characterize that for them. So for instance, they had daily baths, which in the ancient world was probably a rarity. Right? In an age before showers and deodorant and all, people weren't as clean as we are today. But they had this daily ritual of cleansing. It was an outward sign of what they desired inwardly, of the cleansing that they desired inwardly. They even devised an elaborate water system in an age before elaborate plumbing. They devised ways for them to be able to get the water from the river or from the creek up to them to wash, simply so that they could be performing their ritual washings every day. Every day before they sat down for the sacred meal, they did their washings. The Pharisees, we know that in the time of Jesus there were these people called the Pharisees, a little closer to his day. They had rites of washing as well. If we read the New Testament, it hints at some of those rites of washing. How it was that they had to wash at different times before they ate their meal. Right? They'd have to wash up to the elbows and then have someone rinse them off and then wash again. I mean, there were the ritual washings that they did, which were symbolic of their desire to be clean. Yes, physically, because they were washing their physical hands, but it was more than that. It was symbolic. Which is why when Jesus came along, he said, wait, y'all are so focused on washing your hands and everything, so focused on the outside. If only you were so focused on the inside. Because these things are just symbols. It's a symbol of how we want to be cleaned and washed and purified. And not just the washing of the hands, it's a symbol.
Did that pertain to their dishware and stuff like that also?
Say more. Did it pertain to the dishware? Yes. What thought comes to mind?
They had to be washed and cleaned before consuming a meal.
And what would Jesus say in the Bible? The great quote that he says is, think about it for a moment. When you wash dishes, do you just wash the outside of the bowl? What would happen if you just washed the outside of the bowl and put it back in the cupboard? Does that make sense? What part of the bowl should you be washing? The inside. If you're going to wash, if you have to choose between washing the outside or washing the inside, which should you choose?
Inside.
The inside. And that was Jesus' focus. Deacon Roy, that was focusing, rather than focusing on the outside, focusing on the inside of the bowl. So there was a rite of washing. So the Pharisees had their rites of washing, and there eventually came to be a rite of washing to be able to welcome people into the Jewish religion. So if you're a Gentile, a non-Jew, remember that back then there were two types of people. There were Jews and there were Gentiles, or non-Jews. If you were a Gentile and wanted to become a Jew then, we had a washing rite as a symbol of your desire to be cleansed, and to be part of this clean and holy people. Which is why the ancient Israelites, we often talk about it as being a people set apart, a holy people, a people set apart. That's what the word holy really means. This holiness code was to keep us set apart. Not like the Gentiles, but to keep us different from them. We were going to be holy or set apart. And so if you were a Gentile and you wanted to be a Jew now, we had this ceremony by which you were made holy or set apart. This symbol of washing, of cleansing yourself, so that you could be clean like one of us. Not physically clean, but spiritually clean.
I do one of those rituals. Dulce thought that I was talking to her the first time she moved in. She goes like, "Did you say something?" I'm talking to God. So I always do like, "Lord, cleanse me. Open my eyes that I can see what you want me to see. Wash my ears that I can listen only to what you want me to do for the people. And cleanse my heart." And I'm talking, well, I'm praying, I'm not.
Yeah.
And she goes like, "Huh?" said, no, not you. Talking to God. Leave me alone.
So how interesting, that's fascinating ritual, because when you talk about Lord cleanse my eyes, are we talking about a physical sort of cleansing? No, it's more, it speaks to a reality deeper than that.
And-
cleanse my ears, cleanse my heart, cleanse my mouth, whatever.
I mean,
No,
be
it's
able
not.
to speak your word.
What a deeply spiritual shower you have. So how interesting that these rites of baptism, for instance, or these water rituals, were often linked then in later times to the ceremony of circumcision. So that, it's interesting because for men we had this rite which we called circumcision, but for women we didn't. So the question arose, how are we going to welcome women into the community? Can't circumcise them. What solution did we come up with? A ritual washing. Ooh, how fascinating. That we largely have women to thank for a ritual like this, right? We had this other ritual for men, circumcision. Women are not circumcised, so we need some ritual by which to welcome women into the community. How about a ritual cleansing, a ritual washing? Ooh. We saw how it is that those things foreshadowed baptism as we know it today. By the 1st century BC, so now we're getting close to Jesus' time, and then once we get to Jesus, we're talking about baptism because there is baptism in the Gospels, but during the 1st century BC then, rabbis were wondering whether you needed both circumcision and this ritual washing, whether we call it baptism or whatever we call it. Do you need to be both circumcised and ritually washed, they were wondering, if you're a guy, or does it suffice simply to be washed? Because if you were a woman, you'd just be washed and it suffices. Do you follow the argument there? Women just need to be washed. So why do guys need to be washed and circumcised? That debate was being held in the 1st century before Jesus, because if it's good enough for women, why is it not good enough for men? Especially because I'm now 30 years old and I want to join the Jewish religion. Right? So you can imagine the discussion in that era. If it's good enough for women, if the ritual washing, the ritual cleansing, which foreshadowed baptism, was good enough for women, why is it not good enough for men? Do we need to continue doing circumcision? Think about how that fit in history then. If during that century before Christ that was the conversation, to what conclusion did St. Paul come? Did St. Paul say, yes, we should continue circumcision? No, the fruit of that conversation bore fruit there with St. Paul saying, you know, circumcision was great, glad that we've done it for all these centuries, but don't need to do that.